Her name was Sophia Turner, the woman her family always called their pride and joy whenever they needed help. But behind all those compliments was a painful truth that nobody ever wanted to talk about. For many years, Sophia was not treated like a daughter in that family. She was nothing more than a walking source of income. By the time everything began to change, Sophia was 35 years old. She lived with her husband Michael and their 8-year-old son Ethan in a quiet neighborhood outside Portland. From the outside, her life looked like what most people would call happiness: a small home, a husband who truly loved his wife, a sweet child whose smile could make every worry disappear. What nobody knew was that Sophia had sacrificed almost her entire youth to build that life. Even as a little girl, she understood her place in the family. Her mother, Patricia Turner, never tried to hide her favoritism toward her younger daughter Vanessa. If Vanessa brought home decent grades, Patricia would celebrate. If Sophia finished at the top of her class, it was simply what she was expected to do. If Vanessa made a mistake, Patricia would find an excuse for her. If Sophia made even the smallest error, she would be criticized for hours. As the years passed, that difference became an unspoken rule inside the Turner household. When Sophia started college, she took on part-time jobs. At first, she believed she was simply helping her family through a difficult period, but things quickly went far beyond that. Her first paycheck went toward paying utility bills. The next one was used to cover her mother's credit card debt. Then came Vanessa's tuition, Vanessa's apartment rent, Vanessa's car repairs, and the vacations Vanessa proudly showed off all over social media. Whenever Sophia hesitated, Patricia always repeated the same sentence: "Family members are supposed to sacrifice for one another." Sophia believed her. So she worked harder. She picked up extra evening shifts. There were days when she slept only a few hours before throwing herself back into work. Meanwhile, Vanessa enjoyed life like a spoiled celebrity. The most painful part was not the money she lost, it was the fact that nobody ever said thank you. The only person who recognized the injustice was her father, Richard Turner. He was a quiet man who had lived with chronic heart disease for years. His declining health left him with almost no voice in the family. Yet every time he saw Sophia come home exhausted, her eyes red from fatigue, he felt a deep sense of guilt. One winter evening, after Sophia finished a late shift, Richard asked her to sit with him on the back porch. He looked at his daughter for a long moment before speaking. "You were never born to carry other people's lives on your shoulders." Sophia never forgot that look in his eyes. The look of a father who knew his daughter was suffering, yet felt powerless to change anything. Years later, Sophia met Michael. For the first time in her life, someone asked her a very simple question: "Are you happy?" Sophia could not answer, because she had never truly thought about it. Michael was different from everyone she had ever known. He never asked her to sacrifice herself. He never demanded that she prove her worth. He only wanted her to have peace. After they got married, Sophia slowly learned to put her own family first. She began cutting back on the endless financial support. She refused to keep paying for debts created by Vanessa's luxurious lifestyle. And that was when everything started to change. Patricia did not explode with anger. Instead, she became colder. Distance appeared in every phone call, every text message, every family gathering. Then the biggest tragedy of all arrived. Richard passed away after suffering a heart attack. At the funeral, Patricia cried in front of everyone. Vanessa wiped away tears throughout the service, but Sophia felt something completely different: emptiness. Because the only person who had ever stood by her side was gone. 1 week after the funeral, Sophia's phone stopped ringing. A month later, nobody called to check on her. Even on Ethan's birthday, not a single message arrived. Christmas came and went. Then, the New Year. Then many more months. Patricia and Vanessa disappeared from her life as if she had never existed. At the time, Sophia had no idea that their silence was not the end. It was only the calm before the biggest storm of her life. A storm that would expose secrets her father had carried for years, and a storm that would leave the Turner family forever changed, with no possibility of ever going back to what they once were. Nearly 4 years after her father's death, Sophia Turner had grown accustomed to the silence. At first, she checked her phone countless times, hoping there would be a message from her mother. Then, she waited for a birthday call. After that, she waited through holidays. Eventually, she stopped waiting altogether. The absence of Patricia and Vanessa slowly became a normal part of her life, and strangely enough, life became much more peaceful. Ethan grew up surrounded by the love of both his parents. Michael continued building his career, and Sophia finally learned how to live without seeking approval from people who had never truly loved her. Then one afternoon in early November, everything suddenly changed. When she returned home from work, Sophia noticed a cream-colored envelope sitting neatly inside the mailbox. The handwriting on the front was instantly familiar. Patricia Turner, her chest tightened. It was the first time her mother had reached out on her own in years. Inside was an elegant invitation. Patricia was hosting her annual Thanksgiving gathering at her home. Beneath the printed text was a handwritten note. "Life is too short for family members to become strangers. Your father would never have wanted that." Sophia read the sentence over and over again. Part of her wanted to tear the letter into pieces and throw it away, but another part of her was still the same little girl she had always been, still the daughter who hoped her mother might one day change. That evening, Michael finished reading the invitation and placed it on the table. He did not speak immediately. He understood his wife better than anyone. He knew she was hoping for something, and he also knew how dangerous that hope could be. Finally, he asked softly, "Do you really want to go?" Sophia looked out the window. Outside, autumn rain was falling over Portland. She thought about her father. She remembered the family dinners when he was still alive. She remembered what it felt like to belong somewhere. At last, she nodded. Maybe this was the last chance. Michael did not argue. But the uneasy feeling in his chest only grew stronger. The day of the gathering arrived quickly. Patricia's mansion stood in an upscale neighborhood on the western side of the city. As Sophia's car turned onto the familiar street, old memories came rushing back. The house looked the same. The garden looked the same. Yet something inside her felt completely different. The front door opened. Patricia appeared with a flawless smile, a smile Sophia knew all too well. Beautiful, polite, and completely devoid of warmth. Patricia hugged her daughter for a few brief seconds before letting go. She barely asked Sophia how she had been. She showed almost no interest in Ethan. Instead, her attention kept drifting toward the living room where guests were already gathered. That was the moment Sophia began to understand. This gathering was not about family. It was about appearances. More than 20 people filled the living room. Business owners, neighbors, friends, longtime associates of Patricia. Everyone was dressed elegantly. Everyone seemed to view the Turner family as a picture of success. Patricia introduced Sophia with obvious pride. "This is my eldest daughter, my son-in-law, and my grandson." Sophia smiled politely, but inside, a cold feeling spread through her. For years, Patricia had never bothered to call. Yet now she wanted to display her family in front of others. As conversations continued, Sophia wandered into her father's old study. The room had been preserved almost exactly as he left it. The wooden desk, the bookshelves, the worn leather chair. Everything remained in place. But what caught her attention was an older man standing beside the shelves. His name was Harold Bennett. He had been one of Richard's closest friends for many years. The man studied Sophia for a long moment before speaking. "You look more like your father every year." Sophia offered a sad smile. Harold stepped closer. There was something unusual in his eyes. Not pity, something closer to hesitation. Finally, he lowered his voice. "There are some things about your father that you should have known a long time ago." Sophia froze. Her heartbeat quickened. Harold seemed ready to continue. But at that exact moment, Vanessa walked into the room. The smile on her face vanished the second she saw them together. Harold fell silent. Vanessa quickly changed the subject and guided Sophia back toward the living room. But from that moment on, Sophia knew something was being hidden, a secret connected to her father, a secret someone desperately wanted to keep from her. As the evening continued, Ethan wandered toward a glass display cabinet in the corner of the living room. Inside were photographs and keepsakes honoring his grandfather. The boy stood there studying the old pictures with innocent curiosity. At the same time, Vanessa was furiously texting someone on her phone. The irritation on her face was impossible to miss. Her fingers moved rapidly across the screen. No one in the room realized that within a matter of minutes, something terrible was about to happen. Something that would completely destroy the perfect family image Patricia Turner had spent years building. Sophia Turner would never forget that moment. Years later, whenever she thought back to that Thanksgiving night, she could still hear the sound echoing through the room, a sharp crash. And then everything began to fall apart. Ethan was still standing in front of the display cabinet dedicated to his grandfather's memory. The boy was quietly studying the old photographs. Across the living room, Vanessa continued furiously texting on her phone. The tension on her face grew more obvious with every passing second. Whatever conversation she was having was clearly not going well. A few guests noticed her unusual mood, but nobody paid much attention. Everyone was busy talking, busy laughing, busy enjoying the perfect gathering Patricia had worked so hard to create. Then Vanessa spun around suddenly, her arm slammed into the corner of the display cabinet. An old wooden box sitting inside was knocked out of place. Everything happened in an instant. The box crashed onto the floor. The lid flew open. Dozens of old photographs, documents, and sealed envelopes scattered across the room. The entire living room fell silent. Vanessa froze. For a brief moment, everyone understood exactly what had happened. She was the one who had knocked over the box. But then something changed in her eyes. The panic disappeared. In its place came a selfish decision. She pointed directly at Ethan. He did it. The boy knocked it over. He's been running around all evening. The room erupted with shock. Ethan looked around in confusion. He did not even understand what was happening. Sophia immediately stood up. "Vanessa, what are you talking about?" But Vanessa continued. "Everyone saw him standing here. He ruined Dad's keepsakes." Patricia walked over from the dining area. In her hands was a tray carrying fresh coffee she had prepared for the guests. The moment she heard Vanessa's accusation, her face darkened. Not a single question, not a second of thought, not one attempt to find out the truth. She simply stared at Ethan, her eyes filled with anger. Just like years ago, when Sophia had been a child. Just like every time Patricia needed someone to blame, Ethan took a step backward. "I didn't do it. I didn't do it, Grandma." His small voice did not soften Patricia's heart. If anything, it only made her angrier. Patricia rushed forward. She grabbed the chair beside Ethan and yanked it hard. Everything happened too quickly. The chair slammed into the boy's legs. Ethan lost his balance. His small body tilted toward the table. At that exact moment, the tray in Patricia's hands shifted violently. The porcelain cups tipped over. Scalding coffee spilled everywhere. A scream tore through the room. Sophia felt her heart stop. Ethan clutched his arm and chest. Tears instantly streamed down his face. Michael moved before anyone else could react. He rushed forward and lifted his son into his arms. Sophia had never seen him look so frightening. Not because he was panicking, because he was calm. The terrifying calm of a man who had just witnessed something unforgivable. Sophia dropped to her knees beside her son. She heard Ethan crying. She heard the guests whispering in shock. And she heard Vanessa already creating an entirely different version of the story. "He fell by himself. We didn't do anything. It was just an accident." Patricia quickly regained her composure. "That's right. The boy was running around and bumped into the table. Everyone here saw it." Sophia stared at the two women standing before her. One was her mother. The other was her sister. Yet in that moment, they felt more like strangers than anyone she had ever met. No. They felt worse than strangers, because strangers had never betrayed her. Michael pulled out his phone. He called for an ambulance. Then he requested police officers at the scene. Patricia's expression changed immediately. She stepped closer. "There's no need to call the police. We're family." But Michael did not answer. He continued speaking to the emergency dispatcher. The air inside the room became suffocating. Then an older voice suddenly spoke from the back of the room. "I think the police should come." Everyone turned at once. Harold Bennett was standing there. He slowly stepped forward. A phone rested in his hand. Vanessa's face instantly turned pale. Harold looked directly at Patricia. "I recorded a few moments from the party to send to some friends. I think everyone should see this video." The room froze. Vanessa's breathing became rapid. Patricia clenched her fists. For the first time that evening, Sophia saw genuine fear appear on their faces. Harold touched the screen. The video began to play. Every eye in the room focused on the phone. And only seconds later, the truth started to unfold. The truth Vanessa had desperately tried to hide. The truth Patricia was willing to bury at any cost. A truth powerful enough to destroy the Turner family forever. The video lasted less than a minute, but it was enough to destroy every lie that had survived for years. The room fell into a suffocating silence. Everything was crystal clear on the phone screen. Vanessa was the one who had knocked over the keepsake box, not Ethan, not anyone else. Her. The video continued. It showed Patricia rushing forward. It showed her yanking the chair with force. It showed Ethan losing his balance and falling. And finally, it captured the moment the hot coffee spilled toward the young boy. There was no denying it. There was no story left to invent. Vanessa stumbled backward. Her face had gone completely pale. Patricia stood frozen. For the first time in her life, the woman who had controlled everything in her family had lost control entirely. A few guests began whispering among themselves. Some quietly pulled out their phones. Others stared at Patricia in disbelief. The flawless image she had spent years building was collapsing in front of everyone. When the police arrived, there was no longer any argument. The video was immediately handed over. Witness statements were quickly collected. Patricia still tried to explain. Vanessa still tried to justify herself, but it was far too late. That night, Sophia and Michael followed the ambulance to the hospital. For hours, they sat outside Ethan's treatment room. It was the longest night of Sophia's life. She was no longer thinking about her mother, no longer thinking about her sister, no longer thinking about everything that had happened. Her eyes never left the hospital door. She wanted only one thing, for her son to be safe. Just before sunrise, the doctor finally stepped outside. A small smile appeared on his face. "Ethan is going to be okay." The moment she heard those words, Sophia broke down in tears. Not because she was weak, because she could finally breathe again. What she did not know was that the story was far from over. 2 weeks later, Harold Bennett contacted her. He invited Sophia to the office of Richard's former attorney. The moment she stepped inside, she noticed a large archive box sitting on the conference table. Harold was waiting for her. There was sadness in his eyes. "There is a secret your father wanted to tell you for a very long time. He just never got the chance." Sophia felt her heart begin to race. Harold opened the file box. Inside were legal documents that had been carefully preserved for years. The more Sophia read, the more shocked she became. Years earlier, Richard had established a private trust fund. The primary beneficiary was not Patricia. It was not Vanessa. It was Sophia. For years, Richard had quietly built assets and set money aside. He knew there might come a day when his daughter would need a way out. He knew what she had endured. He knew how unfairly she had been treated, so he prepared everything in advance. But after Richard died, the documents suddenly disappeared. The investigation that followed uncovered something even more disturbing. Patricia and Vanessa had known about the trust fund. They had deliberately concealed the information. Several documents even showed signs of being altered. What had started as a family incident at a holiday gathering soon expanded into a series of financial investigations. One by one, the truth came to light. Patricia's reputation collapsed. Business partners walked away. People who had once admired her began learning who she really was. Vanessa lost her job only a few months later. No company wanted to hire someone whose name kept appearing in local news reports connected to family scandals. The irony was that Sophia had never sought revenge. All she had wanted was peace. But sometimes the truth becomes the greatest punishment of all. 1 year later, Sophia's life looked completely different. Ethan was healthy. His smile had returned. Michael remained the same man who stood beside his family through every difficult moment. and Sophia finally received the most valuable gift her father had ever left behind. It was not money. It was not property. It was the truth. The truth that her father had never abandoned her. He had seen everything. He had always loved her, and he had spent years trying to protect her in the only way he could. One summer evening, Sophia stood beside the lake behind her new home. Ethan was playing on the grass nearby. Michael stood next to her. The sun slowly disappeared beyond the horizon. The scene felt almost unreal in its peace. For the first time in many years, Sophia no longer felt like the little girl desperately trying to earn someone's love. She had stopped chasing approval. She had stopped trying to please people who would never appreciate her. Because at last, she understood something important. Real family is not defined by blood. Real family is made up of the people who stand beside you when the rest of the world turns away. And sometimes the greatest freedom in life does not come from forgiveness. It comes from finding the strength to walk away and never look back.